No. My parents used to listen to that all the time. That Kenny Rogers, a lot of weird shit, but
you just pulled the My Parents card?
yeah, no, we in the back of the station wagon with the 8 tracks. Yeah, I love that shit. You get me? The Carpenters. I think did she choke on a sandwich in bed? I might be making that up.
Welcome back to Shat on TV, Game of Thrones edition, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the juggernaut HBO series, Game of Thrones. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside him is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good afternoon.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is our Thronie Awards episode, where we look back at all of Season 8 as a whole and share our closing thoughts, and then reveal how listeners voted in 8 select categories to determine the best of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it's an exciting afternoon here. We're recording before 11 p.m. I'm excited. And there's Game of Thrones also, so I'm excited about that as well.
And we had the good fortune of reconnecting with Roger Roper for Shat the Movies, so we're on a roll right now. High energy. We're well rested, so be careful, everyone. I've had 7 hours of sleep. We're no longer doing 3 episodes a week. This is going to be a high-octane podcast.
I don't know if I'm so high-octane, but I'm excited here. It's going to be good to go back and look at the season as a whole.
So, Big D, one of the things that's happened since the season ended is I've had a lot of time to actually meet up with friends, go to social events, and the top topic on everyone's mind is still Game of Thrones. It's come up while I was on trail runs. It's coming up at the bar. It's coming up at co-ed sports and at the gym. And I just wanted to touch base with you because we've been focusing on so many other things that we haven't taken the time to talk about Game of Thrones and see now that you've had 2 weeks to really digest everything that happened. Any final thoughts on the season?
Yeah, I think that, right after the season, you only hear the two extremes. They scream the loudest. The people who hated it or the people who absolutely loved it. They kind of die off fairly quickly. And then the last 2 weeks, all the people I interact with, it seems to be they kind of liked it. They're in the middle. They don't hate it. They don't love it. For me, I think the season is still encapsulated by that stupid cup of coffee in that water bottle. I mean, prop errors that never happened before. It's a perfect metaphor for this season. That they took their eye off of producing something quality. They kind of lost their way. Instead of focusing on the beloved characters and what the logical thing to do for the narrative would be, Benioff and Weiss, they just focused on doing a big battle. They wanted to be a spectacle. And that's what we got.
I started thinking deep about how I really felt about Game of Thrones. And I started thinking about how would I describe season 8 in a nutshell. And for me, it felt like a spinoff. Like we saw the end to Daenerys and Jon, but there were more stories left to tell, deeper stories with more magic and more gravity. And thankfully, we still have the books for that, like even the existing ones. So I don't know if I'm just in denial, but it's basically come to this, is that I'm not angry about season 8, kind of like the people you talked about, not mad about it. I'm just not pleased with season 8. It's somewhere in the middle. I feel like I'm ready for something else. And King B mentioned that on an earlier podcast, that I just want a new setup, a new world, like something else to focus on right now, because I am done with Game of Thrones. And I don't know if that was the intent, but if it was, the Double D's nailed it. And thankfully, there is a lot of good new stuff coming out with the Deadwood movie and Watchmen and all these other projects. So I don't think I need to spend much more time on Game of Thrones. But I haven't lost that love. And when I've had enough time away from it, maybe later this year, I intend to watch the series all over again and maybe just stop at season 6.
No, I think, though, for me, the one thing that has changed as the weeks have gone on is my anger towards Benioff and Weiss has increased a little bit. We had somebody write into one of the small councils and say, guys, maybe you shouldn't be mad at them. Maybe they realized they weren't good at this. They weren't good at writing their own script and leading their own way. They were great at telling an existing story. They have to admit it, that they're not equipped to carry out and conclude George's story. They can't do it. And George, he consulted on the script. He gave him an outline. But an outline in Game of Thrones, that's not the story. Martin could tell you what to write, but to get there, I think they knew at the end of season 6, they said, you know what? George isn't going to finish the book. We're going to have to do it ourselves. We've been doing it for 10 years. I would have much rather they were self-aware and had the courage to stand up and say, we can't do this justice. We're mentally done. We're out of here. We deserve to put in the effort that the rest of the cast and crew did and try to pass it off to somebody. Because what they did, they have to acknowledge that they half-assed it.
I got to think, though, the silver lining here is that they didn't milk this thing for another couple of seasons. Because people kept saying, what if we had a couple more seasons? What if we had more episodes? If this was the level of effort that was going to be put in, if this is the kind of leadership that was going to be provided, could you imagine this show dying a slow, painful death? Could you imagine 2 more seasons like this? You almost got to be thankful that at least they wrapped it up quickly. I could not watch 3 more seasons of this style of TV show, and I think that would be the saddest outcome of all.
Yeah, but as much as we say the things we would have liked to have, the way it could have been better, still, there's very few shows that compare. And whether there's problems with the story and we can be angry about that, visually, every Sunday you were guaranteed to just sit on your couch and get blown away. So for that, I'm thankful. And as the memory of season 8 and 7 fades a bit, I think we'll look back a little more favorably.
So let's start there. Before we get to the Thronies, let's take a second to talk about what season 8 got right, and then maybe what season 8 got wrong. And overall, does Game of Thrones leave us as a legend of TV shows or a bit of a letdown? And for me, in thinking about what it got right, I can really only focus on episode 2. Episode 2 was an interesting twist in season 8 because after it aired, there was a cry on Twitter and via email from friends of the show and foes alike that nothing happened in episode 2, that you've only got 6 episodes left and nothing happened. How dare they not move the plot along? And now viewers widely consider A Night of the Seven Kingdoms as the best episode of season 8, the episode where nothing happened. And I think that's because episode 2 was this island of old Game of Thrones in a sea of new Game of Thrones. Like, so season 6 got us really hooked on high action. Season 7 kicked that into overdrive. And we wanted that rapid plot development. We wanted people flying all over the kingdom. We wanted big action and dragons and huge scale battles. And we might have become victims of our own desires who were too amped up to understand that we wanted a slower show. And that's why episode 2, the thing that we didn't want, ended up resonating the most.
Yeah, but do you remember when that episode came out? I think we said, Game of Thrones is back. This is what we want. We want to see people conniving. Now that the threat of the dead is out of there, people are breaking off into their little individual groups, their side conversations. In the Great Hall, we have all those multiple conversations, people staring, seeing who's talking. That was what Game of Thrones was, and we noted it at the time. I just didn't think that was going to be the last of Game of Thrones that we got. I was hoping for a little bit more, a little down the road. But for me going back, I took a week after the show ended, and I didn't want to watch the documentary. I felt like it was too soon. It was like I had a family member pass. I didn't want to go sit down and watch the old video of the family reunion or the birthday party. So I wanted to let it rest, and that's what I did. So finally sat down and watched it. And the last watch, I have 2 different takes on it. Number one, because you would ask what was good about this season. You cannot walk away from watching that documentary and have any question as a fan that you don't recognize the quality and the grueling work that went into making this season and every season before. The massive logistical hurdles and personal sacrifice that the crew made. They focus on a husband and wife who did makeup and prosthetics. They put their 3-year-old daughter's life on hold. Whether they're covering some of the extras. There was a Stark guard named Andrew, the guy who's in charge of Snow, the lady who runs the coffee van. Everyone involved in this, you could see it wore on them, and they put work in that took precedence over even their own physical health.
What kind of monster would put entertaining people above the upbringing of their own child? That's disgusting, Big D.
That is, yeah, because one day we're going to do a behind the scenes. It's going to be called like The Last Cast. And it's going to be a review of this, and you're going to see me off the mic just arguing with my wife about why my daughter's in the other room sleeping, and I'm recording a podcast, my 3rd of the day, instead of playing with her. But yeah, then they'd say at least Big D was dedicated, But for everybody who's out there complaining, a majority of the people involved with the show, they dedicated themselves to it. It wasn't because they wanted to it was a paycheck. They did this. It was a passion. And I think that comes through in this documentary. And what they got right was, regardless of plots going left and right, jet packing, you were guaranteed to have a cinematic experience every Sunday night. And I think that never changed.
Two things were fascinating about that documentary. One was when they showed how certain effects were done, the effects were done so well that I didn't know there were effects. And you go back and you think, oh yeah, they didn't really chop that guy's hand off. So that must have been an effect. You didn't think about it at the time. And that's how seamless and clean it was. The other thing that struck me is how much the cast really gave a shit about their characters and how disappointed or shocked they seemed by some of the writing that was going on. I felt it was great that HBO at least was candid enough to show us those reactions, which weren't always good.
No, I mean, imagine Kit Harington's now checked himself into rehab for like his personal health. And I don't know if it is alcohol abuse, if it's just dealing with the death of the show, because it's become, the biggest part of his personality, of what he's been doing the last 10 years and his identity. But this show wore on them. The night shoots, they didn't know what day it was. They didn't know how long they had been shooting. This was not an enjoyable experience. So what we got on screen in the actual execution of the plot was dynamite. It's probably better than we'll see in our lifetime. I just wish that what was on the written page had matched it for dedication.
What I wanted out of the documentary is more of the double Ds. I thought that this was going to be the camera following these two guys around, talking about their vision for the show. And I said it earlier in the podcast earlier this season that I think when this documentary is released, we're going to see how much these guys really cared about what they were doing. You barely saw them at all.
No. And that's why the cynical side of Big D's personality, as the final credits rolled in the documentary, I said, that was nice of them. They put the casting crew first. It's great. They want to take a back seat. And then I said, they fucking knew. They used the smallest members of the crew, an extra, the dude in charge of snow, the lady who runs the coffee van. They're a human shield. I said, Benioff and Weiss rolled out this end documentary, hid themselves from any blame. They didn't talk about any of the controversial topics. Hey, there's no way people can tear apart the lady at the coffee van or the people who didn't watch their child grow up. A part of me thinks they did this intentionally to hide from the tough questions that they, to this day, refuse to answer.
So that brings us to what season 8 got wrong. And thank you to everyone who wrote in and reassured us that we are being fairly balanced. We really do try to be. We wouldn't be balanced without pointing out some of the things that season 8 got wrong. And for me, it was a doom that wasn't matched by the power of that doom, or massive monsters with no teeth, basically. For several seasons, we had seen these horrors like White Walkers and their whites absolutely decimating everything in their paths. So when we knew that 100,000 or so were outside of Winterfell, we felt dread. And we thought, how are we going to work our way out of this? What will the outcome be? Is this the end of mankind? That was literally a question on our minds. And we were off to an amazing start when the Dothraki during the long night disappeared into the dark. I thought, okay, this is the show acknowledging how futile this resistance is. But the dead seemingly lost their bite when things mattered the most. It was like the show just decided we don't want the good guys to lose, so let's make the bad guys not as powerful as they once were. And it's not just that we expected the good guys to take heavy losses. We were offered no reason to believe that they didn't. And that's the thing, is it was never explained or shown to us, which is what a TV show's job is to do, why good prevailed. And so without that explanation, we were so perplexed that we couldn't celebrate. And that's a weird thing to think about. In both instances, King's Landing and the Battle of Winterfell, I was like, why did I not celebrate when the good guys won? I mean, I was glad that Arya killed the Night King, but I wasn't like, oh shit, like they did it. It was more like, how did they do that?
Instead of us feeling that, we felt the exhilaration, we should have felt the relief. And instead, we just went straight to sadness. And I understand that nobody was cheering at the Battle of King's Landing because they're like, woo, yeah, there was nothing there to cheer. So I think if you and I put down a list of all of our problems, if people wrote in and we combined them into some large list, every one of those problems we had are tied back to a single common cause. And it's Benioff and Weiss and their indefensible decision that they were going to fit the story into 73 episodes. That's not the way you do it. What they should have done was said, hey, how many episodes do we need to finish the story that we need to tell. You don't let the story have to be squeezed into a certain amount of episodes. You let the episodes be dictated by how much more time you need to tell the story. And there is no reason that they can come up with other than they were done with it and checked out, because everything, every shortcut, every jetpack, every character betrayal is all tied back to needing to fit that arbitrary 73 episode time frame.
So Big D, with all that considered, looking back at Game of Thrones as a whole over all 8 seasons, is this HBO show, this cultural landmark for us, is it a legendary TV show, or does it end as a letdown?
Oh, I think there's no doubt it's legendary, but it's also a cautionary tale. Every show that comes after this, you know, no matter how much goodwill you've built up. I mean, Game of Thrones, if you'd come to anybody, even after season 7 was questionable, and said, is there anything the show could do that would make you just jump ship? People would be like, no way, the show's too good. It's been too good for too long. And so all you producers out there, all you studios, all you television stations, all your content creators, don't think because 7 years people have loved you that they're going to love you if you half-ass it. You got to stay true to the end. And if you don't stick the landing, people are going to remember the first 6 years, but they're also going to call you to task.
And Big D, I think when you say half-ass it, nobody's saying that the production and the cast and everybody else didn't try here.
No.
It's more to the effect of you gave up on putting in the effort that you did in earlier seasons to make this the exceptional show that it is. And instead you relied on parlor tricks.
Exactly. And I want to clarify that. You're obviously capable of putting in the work and putting out a detailed product. No errors. You dot the I, you cross the T. Everything is buttoned up. And then all of a sudden you can't do it. I don't know that their hearts were in it towards the end. And you're doing that at the expense of all the other people working their ass off. And I still will always remember this as one of the greatest shows on TV. I think most people will. But for me, there is a sad caveat that I have to internalize. Before the season aired, I told 2 or 3 friends who had never watched it. I said, come on, you got to sit down and watch it. I convinced them to binge 7 seasons in about 3 months. Now, I would have told them, hey, binge it, but I just got to give you this little caveat. There's going to be an ending that might not satisfy you. And for me to admit that, it's kind of sad.
What surprised me about Game of Thrones as a whole is how much people were able to relate to it. I never would have thought that a fantasy show set in a time of swords and spells would be so relevant to people's lives. And even at its worst, Game of Thrones gave us a common lexicon. Like, we now use characters and events that happen in Game of Thrones to describe everyday things. And Carrie Gross said to me after she finally relented and started watching the show, she's like, the memes alone make this show worth watching. I'm like, absolutely. Whether it's relationship betrayal or failing at work or great successes, insurmountable odds, there's a meme or a GIF from Game of Thrones for every situation.
Yeah, I think without doubt, this show has introduced dragons to a portion of the world population that never would have accepted dragons. Even if you told me at the beginning, oh, there's going to be dragons, there's going to be dead, I'd be like, oh, fuck that. I want to see some good, political machinations. I want to see some conniving backstabbing. And most of the world's like that. Nobody's going to sit down and watch, I don't know, Lord of the Rings. That has its audience. But this show reached an audience that never would have liked that fantasy genre. And I think for that, it's an amazing thing to get people to try something that they normally would never even think of trying.
For critics of season 8, I also would look back to season 7 and say, we need to stop pretending that season 8 was the low point of this show, because there was dumber shit that happened earlier on. Obviously, we had the Sand Snakes, but season 7 in itself, to me, was equally upsetting. It was no better than season 8. So for me, the show has actually been on a decline for at least 2 years. Going north of the wall to capture one white to show Cersei in hopes of changing her mind. Like, did anyone think that would work?
No, what about Arya getting stuck in the gut by the wave and then jumping into that dirty ass river? I'm like, she's dead and somehow miraculously recovered. These are things that never would have happened before, and we would never even have had to question.
And in talking with a lot of friends and listeners in the past week, the conversations have definitely shaped my lasting impression of Game of Thrones. I don't have the same impression that I did 2 weeks ago. People have really gotten in my head and sort of tempered my views, which were overwhelmingly positive, I think. But now I'd say we're more middle ground. I encourage people to do this exercise. Watch episodes 1 and 2 of season 1, and then watch episodes 5 and 6 of season 8. It's a different TV show. That's why it makes sense that episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, in which very little happened, but we dove deep into the characters and their shared history, was the most powerful. It's the one episode of this entire season that felt like the origins. And for me, Big D, as you said about the show being legendary, it will always be legendary because the things that they created, the feelings, the rules that they created in this world, no one's touched that as far as TV, as far as I'm concerned. No one is even near this level, and it'll be the gold standard, I think, the benchmark for everything coming forward.
Yeah, and I think they accomplished something that's very difficult to do. The world isn't black and white. It's shades of gray. I always tell friends who I'm trying to get them to watch the show, I said, there's going to be a character who paralyzes a young boy because he's having sex with his sister. Oh, but you're going to love him after a couple seasons. To do that is a miracle of writing, right? You know, you have Walter White in Breaking Bad, but still, he's not that likable at the end. You're pulling for him, but he's still a villain. This show had the ability to paint characters in a realistic light. People that are good do bad things. Bad people do good things. Not everything is clear cut. And this show, on a whole, for 7 seasons, 8 seasons, it really did paint a world that was realistic and where you never quite knew what people were going to do. A redemption arc was always possible. And I don't think you can sell that short. So in the end, it has to be remembered as legendary. Let's hope we still have part of the podcast with us, that everybody didn't just turn us off for being downers. I mean, because anybody who's listening to a podcast 2+ weeks after the last show aired, they're probably loving it. And then they just turned it on to hear us just pour like a wet blanket on top of their headphones.
Yeah, well, thankfully, we're only talking about 1/3 of the population that was listening to us 2 weeks ago. So thanks, everyone, for sticking around. Join us on Chat the Movies and The Watchmen this fall. But I do want to get to the Thronies, the meat of this episode, which is the viewer votes. We had more than 450 listeners go in and vote for their favorite and least favorite characters, actions, and props from season 8. So without further ado, Big D, if you could usher us in to the Game of Thrones Thronie Awards. The smallest award, but perhaps one of the most impressive, was the Best Dressed. Amid the fire and blood, Game of Thrones brought us breathtaking gowns, armor, and hairdos, and Season 8 seemed to revel in making the outside match what was happening inside. We saw shifts in color, transformations from diplomacy to war, and even Jaime Lannister in some drab rags. So who wore their best, the best? And the nominees are the Night King. He hails from an ancient time. He lives in a desolate, frozen tundra. He is the living embodiment of death, but still, the Night King takes the time to fashion his own armor, weapons, and that weird flesh crown. Also, did you catch his arts and crafts at Last Hearth? Fabulous! Cersei Lannister is the next candidate. She has been a Game of Thrones fashion icon since day one, and her outfits seem to reflect the zeitgeist of King's Landing. Early on, it's flowing gowns and bright Lannister colors. In Season 8, it's stoic armor and heavy fabrics. And of course, there was that weird Faith Militant phase. But through it all, even the mom hair, Cersei's been breathtaking. Her counterpart, Daenerys Targaryen. Drogon must have a luggage compartment somewhere because the Mother of Dragons always arrives in style. We're not sure her armor is functional, but Dany has emerged from every battle unscathed. Whether she's wrapped in white furs up north or black scale down south, we bow down to that fire. Next up was Sansa Stark. Sansa had basically 2 looks in Season 8, and both were stunning. There was that black leather armor and needle necklace she wore through most of the episodes, combative, fierce, and reminiscent of Cersei and Littlefinger. And there was the gown she wore once crowned Queen of the North, a rich tapestry of her history and the legacy of her land. Remember that Sansa is a seamstress, so bonus points for doing her own work. Next up, we have one male candidate, Sir Gregor Clegane. It wasn't pretty, but the Mountain's armor was unmistakable. Some compared it to a medieval tank. Some compared it to Darth Vader, especially when that helmet came off. The idea was to strike fear in the heart of anyone who threatened Cersei, and also to hide the fact that dude was undead. So, Big D, those are the nominees. Take us through the winners.
Whew. But before I get to the winners here, I just want to let everybody know that Gene wrote all of those descriptions So as cold-hearted as he is, the way I mock him a lot of times for not caring, he just likes to break it down. He is fabulous. And he just, if you ever want to go back and listen to last year's Thronies or even the Westworld, what do we call them? The Westies?
The Westies, yeah.
Oh, his fashion breakdown, it's fabulous. It's great. So, Gene, I want to thank you for doing that.
Baby, we're just getting started. All right. So who are the top three, Big D?
Okay, so the top three, they were some of our perennial best looking every year. In third place was Cersei.
It was the hair.
Unfortunately, she didn't have much to do this season, so they really didn't dress her up to impress. Yeah, in second place was Daenerys. She did have some various looks, but they were all similar until she broke out the black at the end in King's Landing. Nobody really took notice, but the winner, by far, with 60% of the vote, was Sansa Stark. That dress that she wore when she became the Queen of the North, all the hidden meanings, was fabulous. It was beautiful. And I'd mentioned on one of the podcasts, it deserves to be in some museum somewhere because it is up there with anything the show has created before.
And one of our listeners did write in and let us know that a lot of those costumes are actually on display right now in an exhibit in Belfast, Ireland. So if you are in the Belfast area, first of all, let me stay at your house. Secondly, go check out that exhibit. It is fascinating from the photos that I've seen.
But Gene, I always, pride myself on the fact that our audience is unique and often have their own special takes. Did we get any good write-in votes?
Yeah, there were some fabulous ones. So again, for people who didn't go to the Thronies and vote, first of all, shame on you. But secondly, people were able to write in their own nominees for these candidates. And my favorite was Ghost. They said that Ghost was able to keep his fur pristine and beautiful throughout the show. Just saying, even after the battle for Winterfell, he was a little scruffy, but he still cleaned up nice by the final episode, even though he was missing an ear. He is and always will be the goodest boy ever.
My favorite by far was a write-in for Robin Aaron. That blue was breathtaking. Who taught him such style? Didn't Littlefinger off his mum and depart the veil with Sansa? Jan Royce and all the nights, I'm dying. The new words of House Aaron, as high as fashion.
Love it. Next category is the best prop. George R.R. Martin's imagination and HBO's designers teamed up to bring us unforgettable symbols of death, power, and beauty. So which Game of Thrones prop was the best? We start off with the biggie, the Iron Throne. What prop could be more important than the seat that summarized Game of Thrones for 8 seasons? The Iron Throne was both the beginning and the end for so many characters' aspirations. Why anyone would want to sit on a chair made of melted swords is beyond us. Next up was Arya's Catspaw Dagger. We first saw the Catspaw Dagger when an assassin attempted to kill Bran while he was in a coma. Cat Stark retrieved it from that attack and showed it to pretty much everyone before giving it to Ned, who promptly lost it to Lord Baelish. Son of a bitch. Then Littlefinger gives it to Bran, who says, "What am I supposed to do with the dagger?" and hands it to someone very good with daggers, Arya. And we all know where it went from there. Stabby, stabby, Mr. Krabby. Next up was Jon Snow's Longclaw, slightly larger blade. No, Longclaw did not magically come to life in season 7. I thought it did. And no, it didn't end up killing the Night King, but Jon Snow's sword has done serious work in this series, from the Battle of the Bastards to the Long Night, from Hardhome to King's Landing. The Mormont House sword stands for bravery, resilience, and the North. The next prop this season was Cersei's wine goblet. Lena Headey, who played Cersei Lannister, reportedly earned $144,000 per minute for Game of Thrones Season 8, and she didn't have to ride a dragon, swing a sword, or die on camera. Instead, she just stared from a balcony while holding arguably the most famous wine goblet in TV history. The next prop that was nominated for Best Prop of Season 8 was Joffrey's crossbow. Like an old friend just looking for another Lannister to kill, Joffrey's comically large crossbow reappeared in Season 8 when Bronn of the Blackwater was hired to assassinate Tyrion and Jaime. Of course, he didn't, and suddenly he was master at coin. Still kind of wanted to see anyone get shot by that beautiful contraption. Next up, we have a bigger crossbow, Qyburn's Scorpion 2.0 Ballista. Speaking of contraptions, Qyburn's anti-dragon weapon got an upgrade in Season 8, and apparently making the Scorpion 2.0 gigantic also made it impossibly accurate, until it wasn't. But still, for a minute, we were really scared of those things, until we weren't. And the last prop is the Dothraki. Need fighters to fatally demonstrate the futility of hurtling into an abyss filled with undead soldiers? Use the Dothraki. Need to demonstrate the horrors invading forces unleash upon civilians caught in the crossfire? Use the Dothraki. Want some hollering in the back rows of your pep rally? Use the Dothraki. They're a multi-purpose prop that conveniently disappears after their queen has been stabbed through the chest. And those, Big D, are the nominees for Best Prop of Season 8.
But Gene, the Dothraki, they're not a prop. They're people.
Yeah, you would think. Maybe someone should have told the writers that.
And to the person who wrote that in, yes, we understood that the Dothraki were not a prop, and that's the point we were trying to make. So this one, the vote was incredibly close. In third place was Longclaw, and the difference between second place and the winner was only 2 votes, incredibly close. Second place was Arya's Cat's Paw Dagger, and the winner, without a doubt, it had to be the Iron Throne itself.
I was surprised by this. I thought Cat's Paw was going to be a runaway favorite, but we had some really interesting write-ins that might have, if any of these people would have chosen Cat's Paw, they could have put it over the edge. It's a real Jill Stein sort of situation. But some of the great write-ins we had, obviously a nod to Cersei's lacy metal pauldrons, which I personally loved. Bran's wheelchair assistant. And one of my favorites was the last table where we see a group of men as the best leaders around after years of amazing female characters duked it out. Wah, wah.
And a prop that maybe wasn't intended to be on screen, but got a lot of attention and got a lot of votes actually in the write-in there was the Starbucks coffee cup. So Starbucks is happy. Go out, I guess, and buy yourself a venti.
Also, whoever wrote in Jaime Lannister's fuck stump, good work.
You know what that made me think of? You remember early on, we questioned why we didn't do a Wolverine type hand apparatus that he could use. I went back and watched it. That fight, Jaime actually hits somebody with his hand. Like, boom, it makes like a noise. He actually uses it as a weapon against Euron.
Oh, yeah, I mean, wouldn't you? All right, so best prop goes to the Iron Throne. Next up, we have the biggest what the fuck moment. Season 8 felt a bit rushed. Logic became a bit more flexible, and certain moments just made us sit up and say, what the fuck? What was your biggest WTF moment? We had snow in King's Landing. So if you remember in King's Landing, the sun is shining in Euron Greyjoy's eyes. The Northerners are attacking King's Landing in short sleeves. Summer days don't get more beautiful than what we saw in The Bells. And then one episode later, it's snowing? Like enough to cover a dragon? Okay, maybe winter is here. So we'll have the Kingsmoot in some sort of a wintry dragon pit. Nope, it's sunny again. Just kidding. So what the fuck is going on with the weather in King's Landing? Next up, we had Sam Tarly's performance in The Long Night. Women, elderly, and children, and Tyrion, into the crypts. Only fighters are allowed on the battlements to defend Winterfell against the Night King. Oh, and I guess we'll let Sam Tarly help. Surely he won't keep falling down and crying. People could end up dead trying to protect him. The next what the fuck moment nominee is Grey Worm not killing Jon Snow. Missandei taught Grey Worm to live for himself, unshackling him from his unsullied training, and his helmet apparently. Seeing her executed atop the walls of King's Landing changed Grey Worm, and we saw it as he mercilessly slaughtered surrendered Lannister soldiers on Dany's orders. So when Jon Snow killed Daenerys, Grey Worm did exactly what we would expect. He calmly imprisoned Jon, wrote ravens to the surrounding kingdoms, imposed order in King's Landing, and then delivered Tyrion to the Kingsmoot for a polite conversation about the realm's future. Seems much more likely than killing the man who just stabbed your queen while she was trying to love on him. Next up, we have Euron's ambush of Rhaegal. Modern anti-aircraft systems have struggled with pinpoint accuracy when it comes to hitting a moving target at sea, relying instead on volume of fire to blanket the sky in bullets and flak. Computer guidance has made things a bit easier, but aircraft still have the upper hand. Yet somehow, a ship-mounted ballista with no visible aiming mechanism scored 3 direct and vital hits on a dragon at great distance. Sure, Rhaegal was exhausted and injured from the long night, but how do you explain Euron's entire fleet appearing from out of nowhere after the first 3 Scorpion 2.0 bolts were fired? Inconceivable! The next nominee we have is Jaime Lannister returning to Cersei. Game of Thrones fans watched for 8 seasons as Jaime Lannister transformed from arrogant rich boy to defender of the living. As Big D said, we found ourselves cheering for a man who crippled a boy to cover up an incestuous love affair with the queen. And that long journey seemed to culminate in Jaime finally falling in love with Brienne of Tarth, an awkward woman warrior deemed unlovable and ugly by so many before him. But as the series closed, Jaime abandoned Brienne and returned to his evil queen of a sister, who also happened to be sleeping with gross-ass Euron Greyjoy. The next nominee for What the Fuck moment was the infinite Dothraki and Unsullied. The Dothraki charged valiantly into the dark battlefield of the Long Night, and viewers thought, oh well, they're gone now. The Unsullied suffered heavy casualties in that same battle and appeared largely decimated as we saw the massacre inside Winterfell's walls. But after the Night King was vanquished, we learned that only roughly half of Daenerys' force remained. Half! Giving Game of Thrones the benefit of the doubt, we accepted that number, and were baffled again as Daenerys gathered her victorious forces outside the Red Keep. Soldiers and riders as far as the eye could see. I guess those guys just grow up really fast. And the final nominee is hiding from the army of the dead in the Winterfell crypts. Hiding underground isn't uncommon when you're faced with a massive military attack, but when that attack is coming from the army of the dead, who can raise the dead, hiding in a crypt seems like a really bad idea. And yet Tyrion Lannister and Sansa Stark, reportedly two of the sharpest minds in Westeros, didn't foresee generations of Stark corpses coming to life and threatening women and children. Perhaps Tyrion and Sansa knew that one season before, a white captured north of the wall couldn't even escape a wooden box. Therefore, there's no way centuries-old ghouls could burst out from stone tombs. They must have forgotten that they were in Season 8 of Game of Thrones. And Big D, those are the nominees for biggest what the fuck moment of Season 8.
Well, Gene, I think I just may have cracked the case and we could eliminate one of these categories or one of these nominees. Why do we assume that the Dothraki died? Because their blades went out?
Yeah.
We don't see them get killed. Maybe the Night King just put out the blades with the snow, and then they just rode off disoriented into the woods.
And Jorah just came back and was like, those guys all just rode off disoriented into the woods.
It's fucking snowy. I can't see. What happened? What happened? All that commotion we heard of that we thought was the undead, it was the Dothraki just hitting each other.
Well, it's dark, yeah.
It was a big traffic accident. Fuck, we got it solved. Okay, so my vote, I was the one person out of everybody who chose snow in King's Landing. So screw all of you for not agreeing with me. But in third place, a worthy winner was Grey Worm not killing Jon. And second place was the infinite Dothraki and Unsullied. And the winner, it had to be. Everybody said, what the fuck? Euron's ambush out on a beautiful day in the open water, being able to shoot down Rhaegal.
After that episode, I remember being so upset about the Scorpion 2.0 thing, and everyone's like, calm down. You're just mad that Rhaegal died. I'm like, no, it makes no sense.
After we watched the attack on King's Landing, I put the Kenny Loggins hit Danger Zone over Daenerys' strafing run, the attack. I think that they need to put a new piece of music over that flight that she has when she's shot down. She is distracted. She's just up in the cloud. She's singing, sailing, take me away to where I'm going. She is in another place. And it's because somebody wrote in and said that loved Canyon Dragon Ride. That's why the dragon got shot down, because she was reminiscing about that wonderful flight with Jon.
I think we're getting a lot of insight into your musical taste, though, Big D, because Kenny Loggins and Christopher Cross both qualify as yacht rock. You might be living in Florida a little bit too long, buddy.
No, my parents used to listen to that all the time. That Kenny Rogers, a lot of weird shit. But
fuck, you just pulled the My Parents card?
Yeah, no, we in the back of the station wagon with the 8 tracks. Fuck yeah, I love that shit. You get me? The Carpenters. I think did she choke on a sandwich in bed? I might be making that up, but. My favorite write-in vote was the Hound turning down sex. That was the most unbelievable what the fuck moment in season 8.
I liked Cersei's miraculous pregnancy weight loss fitness program. And of course, I think one that was on the minds of lots of people was no one at all stating that Jon Snow was the rightful heir to the throne and just letting Grey Worm dictate his fate. Like, why the fuck have the whole R plus L equals J? All right, the next category for the Game of Thrones Thronies is the best death. Game of Thrones really should have been titled Who's Gonna Die This Week? And Season 8 had an impressive body count. So whose death was the most satisfying or impactful? And the nominees are the Brothers Clegane. Game of Thrones went full WWE for this one. We got eye-poking, armor stripping, shoulder stabbing, and one incredible leap off the top ropes. Plus, the Hound stayed true to character the entire time. The next death nominee is Rhaegal. Guys, that was a lot of blood. Top Gun fans know the heartbreak of seeing that fatal splash at sea, and the entire thing was so sudden that it left audiences reeling. The next nominee for Best Death is Lady Lyanna Mormont. The fiercest lady in the North demanded to do battle at Winterfell, refusing to take shelter in the crypt. And when faced with an undead giant, she stood her ground and fought like a true Mormont, killing an adversary 20 times her size. Another death nominee for Season 8 was Melisandre of Asai. If you're gonna die, try dying like Melisandre. You show up at a critical time, let everyone who wants to kill you know you're gonna die on your own, save the day, and then walk away and crumble to dust. Boss. Her counterpart, Beric Dondarrion, is also a nominee. Talk about a death that was long overdue. Beric Dondarrion was playing Game of Thrones on cheat mode until he ran out of extra lives. When all of Winterfell was collapsing and hope was lost, he kept fighting and used his body to shield his comrades. Next nominee is Euron Greyjoy. Did anyone not want to see this guy die? Next up, Daenerys Targaryen. We watched her grow up, break chains, fulfill her destiny, and perish in the arms of her lover. Few Game of Thrones deaths were as heartbreaking as saying goodbye to the greatest source of hope we had known through 8 seasons. Dany was slain at the peak of her optimism by the man we considered a hero. Tragedy all around. The next death nominee for Best Death of Season 8 is the Night King. He was untouchable, he was unbeatable, and no man stood a chance against him. Thankfully, Arya was there to leap from the shadows and trick flip the cat's paw dagger up in this blue son of a bitch. Also a nominee for Best Death of Season 8 is Sir Jorah Mormont. When Sir Jorah softly told his Khaleesi, "I'm hurt," the tears started flowing for this exiled knight who steadfastly served a woman who never would love him as he did her. Jorah stood brave in battle, continuing the fight outside Winterfell's walls, his honor restored by wielding Heartsbane and serving in the vanguard of the living. The next nominee for Best Death is the Golden Company. They are losers. Missandei of Noth is the next nominee. She represented kindness, peace, and diplomacy, and her senseless killing was a rejection of all those ideals. Beheaded on the wall of King's Landing, she had seen Cersei Lannister's cruel heart and had one final word for her Khaleesi and her lover, Dracarys. Next up, we have a twofer, Jaime and Cersei Lannister together. To Cersei, nothing mattered more than family, and to Jaime, nothing mattered more than Cersei. He died falling short of redemption, and she died under the weight of the city that she ruled. Their child would never draw breath. And the final nominee for Best Death of Season 8 is Theon Greyjoy. You're a good man. Theon found his peace and killed a shit ton of whites during his last stand in the Winterfell Godswood. He would never be king of anything, but he lived to rise above being an embarrassment to the Ironborn and the Starks. So Big D, those are the many, many nominees for Best Death of Season 8.
And so this was another tight category, and there was a lot of votes spread across the board. But first and third place were separated by only 8 votes. So in third place was the Night King. Second place was Jorah Mormont. And the winner, surprisingly, was Lady Lyanna Mormont.
This one fascinates me because if you remember earlier episodes of the season, we talked about the fact that Lyanna Mormont was not supposed to be this big recurring character. People just gravitated toward this character. And I agree. I was in love with this character. Not in love with the little girl. In love with the character of Lyanna Mormont. And so seeing this death was striking. It was a high point, I think, in the long night and a great deal of bravery. And I didn't even realize this until now that there was a great parallel between her death and Arya Stark's triumph. So good on you, Game of Thrones. Good on you.
I mean, but I think that's also kind of an indictment of the show. After all these seasons, after all the time we've invested in the characters, that people were most shocked by a character who died. I think she was in 8 episodes. She was in the equivalent of like 1 episode with Tyrion as far as screen time. You think that you would have cared, that you would have been devastated by some of these deaths. So I think even though people liked her, did you really like her, or were you more shocked than some of the other characters on this list?
For me, the surprise was that Jorah Mormont wasn't higher on it, because I think for me, from an emotional standpoint, that was the most devastating death. Even though we all kind of knew that it was going that way, I think they filmed it very beautifully. And I think that utterance of "I'm hurt" like really hit me hard. So again, although he was really early in the deaths this season too, so maybe it was just the shock of it. But we had some pretty creative write-ins. One of them was the death of Dan and Dave's credibility. Mm-hmm. Ouch. Someone else pointed out that they sobbed when Cersei died and cheered when Daenerys died. And I think that was a testament to the quality of how quickly episode 6 could turn things around for people emotionally.
We also had another write-in for the death of Samwell Tarly's manhood. I second that vote.
And of course, Aaron Rodgers. Nobody voted for Mac from Always Sunny, though. He had a good death, too. That arrow through the eyeball.
And also Qyburn got a bunch of write-in votes.
Yeah, there's no substitute for just smacking a dude's head on the rocks.
Exactly.
Sexy. All right, the next category is the thickest plot armor, so kind of the opposite side of the deaths. Game of Thrones taught us early on that anyone can die at any time, except for our favorite characters who are invincible. Plot armor was a big issue in Season 8. Whose was the thickest? First nominee is Arya Stark. Arya's death dodging was pretty incredible, even if you got beyond the fact that she crowd surfed dozens of whites in the long night. She basically did a half marathon during Daenerys' attack on King's Landing and survived the fire and brimstone that killed literally everyone around her. Moving to the skies, the next nominee is Drogon. His brother was killed by an ice javelin. His other brother was killed by scorpion bolts fired from a ship. But Drogon manages to weave his way through an entire fleet of scorpion ships in broad daylight, then proceeded to take out every anti-dragon defense in King's Landing without a scratch. I guess that's why he's the last dragon alive. The next nominee is Sam Tarly. Sam basically took a nap during the long night, and not a single white had the decency to give him a good chomp. The next nominee is Jaime Lannister. I did the math, and King's Landing is miles wide. So Jaime would have needed to jog several miles to Cersei after being fatally stabbed by Euron Greyjoy, and those miles would have had stairs to climb, and flames, and falling debris. What the fuck ever. The next nominee for thickest plot armor is Jon Snow. Do you guys remember when Jon was standing in a field of the dead and they all started to rise and he was surrounded? Daenerys didn't rescue him immediately. Dude somehow fought for a bit, and then he survived an undead Viserion by hiding behind stones and yelling at him. Next nominee is Sir Brienne of Tarth. All right, so I counted like a half dozen times that I saw Brienne covered in whites, and then she wasn't, and then she was again, and then she wasn't. Look, anyone in the front line defending Winterfell would be straight up dead. I'm sorry. That was a wave of the undead. Next up, we have Grey Worm. By the end, the dude didn't even need his helmet. Plot armor got Grey Worm through the long night and the bells. He was unstoppable. And the final nominee for thickest plot armor goes to Tormund Giantsbane. And basically just see the description for Brienne of Tarth, because same thing. Big D, those are the nominees for thickest plot armor of Game of Thrones Season 8.
Okay, so this category wasn't that close. In third place, Arya Stark. I don't know if I agree with that. She seemed able-bodied. She seemed spry. She could maneuver. She got out of tricky situations. There was never people piled on top of her.
Big D, she back rolled over like 12 whites in a staircase.
Yeah. Come on, that's faceless men parkour. You can fucking do that. Didn't you see her before jumping off walls? It was great. Yeah, she could do that. I believe it. She could survive more than some of the other people, some of these old men. Come on. How much cardio do you think Jaime has? How much cardio do you think fucking Barrack has? You think he could run down a flight of stairs in full armor and not be out of breath? There's no way he's fighting for 2 hours.
They don't have cars. They walk everywhere. Their cardio is excellent.
It could be better. Could be better and you would survive, right? It's like, I don't know if people know, I'm a big fan of zombie flicks. And if you're in a zombie apocalypse, forget about weapons, forget about everything else. Get your cardio in. Make sure you have the stamina to run away, because in the end, that's what it always comes down to. But the winner is somebody who does not do much cardio. It is Samwell Tarly. The plot armor was thick, and it leaves me wondering, why didn't they just protect Bran by draping Sam Tarly over the wheelchair? Have him be like a giant meat blanket shield. The Night King could just keep poking, and it would just seem to always miss Samwell. Bran would be immortal.
Yeah, but then you would lose the guy who has the books and the guy who has all the memory, and the Night King would be overly satisfied. He'd be glib at that point. You can't satisfy the Night King too much.
No, the Night King would be he'd be frustrated. He would keep trying to kill Samwell, and Samwell's fat ass would keep surviving. And he would just sit there poking, and then Arya comes, she does her spider monkey, jumps and kills him. That's the proper defense.
I just want to point out to anybody who's offended by the term fat ass, Big D and I are both overweight, so.
Yeah. Come on, that's our people.
It's our fat asses unite.
Yeah, that's our people.
Some of the write-ins we had were pretty great. There was one person who agreed with me and said every one of the front lines at Winterfell. Absolutely. One that I guess I should have included that a lot of people wrote in was Tyrion Lannister. They felt that his life was in peril several times and somehow he got out of it, but also the fact that he was basically just walking through King's Landing without a weapon or a guard or anything.
He survived somehow.
And of course, honorable mention to the white horse that just miraculously showed up in the middle of Winterfell and carried Arya away. Never to be seen again or explained. Thanks, Game of Thrones.
Where did it carry her away exactly to?
Yeah, because she was right back at King's Landing like a minute later.
Yeah. Maybe the horse dies right outside the gate and we didn't see that part. She's like, fuck, there goes my ride. I got to go see if John can hook me up.
I think that horse was actually a metaphor for Arya's relevance riding away since she did nothing else the rest of the season.
Oh.
Okay, that brings us up to some of the big ones now. The category is Best Episode. So Season 8's 6 extra-length episodes span from massive battles to intimate moments. We saw romance, hate, healing, and devastation. Which episode was the best overall? We had Episode 1, Winterfell. The gang returns from a long break. Jon and Dany go on a Disney dragon ride. The Night King does some wall art. The Northerners are like, what? And there's lots and lots of reunions. Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That's when Brienne is knighted. Arya gets her first taste of sex. Farewells are said as we set the table for battle. Episode 3 was The Long Night, the longest battle scene ever filmed. Arya kills the Night King. The Mormonts get wiped out. Episode 4, The Last of the Starks. Jon reveals his secret to Sansa and Arya, and then it's not a secret anymore. Jaime sleeps with Brienne, then bails. Rhaegal dies, and nobody pets Ghost. Episode 5, The Bells. Daenerys torches Varys and King's Landing. Lots of people die. Arya rides a horse. And finally, Episode 6, The Iron Throne. That's the one where Jon kills Dany and is sent to the Wall. Tyrion goes from prisoner to Hand of the King. King's Landing hosts its first King's Moot. Grey Worm gets robbed, and Sansa becomes queen of an independent North. Drogon pieces out. So those are the nominees, Big D, for Best Episode of Season 8.
So I'm stunned. I did not see the results until this moment. My mouth hung open. I was surprised and shocked. In third place was Episode 5, The Bells. In second place was The Long Night, Episode 3. And the winner, Episode 2, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I'm shocked. I'm shocked and happy. I can't believe people agreed with us.
It's not just the winner. 1 in 2 voters, so 50% of the audience chose Episode 2, which I recall when it came out was largely panned as let's move on with it. The season's only got 6 episodes. Why are we wasting time talking? It was this feel-good episode. Everyone's just standing around drinking. It is my favorite episode of the season. I'm glad people agreed.
I remember at the time that we thought it was an episode focused on characters saying goodbye to each other. Maybe it was the characters saying goodbye to us as fans. Like, hey guys, it's great to see you. This is our finale. You're not going to recognize us next week.
Trying to tell us to stop watching?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
That scene where Tyrion's pouring the wine out for Pod and he spilled. Oh, God. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Not going to cry, though, fuckers. All right, next up, we have the Man of the Year. And before anybody says we should have had a Person of the Year, I was just trying to make more categories, guys. So I split it to man and woman, since at least in Game of Thrones, we're fairly gender binary on the show. So apologies to anybody who was upset by that. Nobody wrote in about it, but I just wanted to make that clear that I had some consternation as I was doing it. But I was like, how else am I going to split them? So I made it very specific. It's human males who identify as male. So Man of the Year, Game of Thrones put our heroes to the test this season. Some triumphed, some failed, but all did their best. Win or lose, which human male character moved you the most? And the nominees are Tormund Giantsbane. The dude loved Brienne and Jon unconditionally and was even cool about Brienne not wanting him. Sir Podrick Payne. Pod really grew up this season and was selected for the Kingsguard. Sandor Clegane. The character most interested in self-preservation taught Arya her life was worth saving, and then he gave his life to destroy literally the worst guy in the world. The next nominee is Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion tried his best to temper Daenerys' fury and spare the people of King's Landing, and despite years of mistreatment, He fostered a love for a family that didn't always love him. The next nominee for Man of the Year is Bran Stark. He has the best story. Duh. Bran survived a deadly fall, an assassin, an invasion, a trip north of the Wall, and the Night King. He also has green sight and sort of just got elected king. The next nominee for Man of the Year is Jon Snow. Jon Snow either saved the Seven Kingdoms from a bloody and tyrannical rule, or he killed his lover and the realm's one chance at peace, prosperity, and liberation. Either way, this guy rose from unwanted bastard to war hero and rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And now he's living with a beardo roommate and a one-eared wolf. Next nominee is Grey Worm. He said very little, but his actions meant a whole lot. Grey Worm fought valiantly, loved purely, and commanded the most powerful fighting force in the series. If it wasn't for this humble and brave soldier, Winterfell would have fallen, and King's Landing wouldn't even matter. The next nominee for Man of the Year is Sir Jorah Mormont. He led the first charge against the army of the dead and swung Heartsbane until the bitter end. Jorah Mormont left Westeros a disgraced slaver, survived the horrors of grayscale, and returned as a beacon of honor to die in the long night. The next nominee for Man of the Year is Sir Jaime Lannister. Sir Jaime Lannister wasn't a deserter, a coward, or a sadist. He was a conflicted man who recognized his own flaws and grew immensely as a person. His actions didn't save Winterfell or King's Landing, but his personal triumphs were tremendous. And the final nominee for Man of the Year is Lord Varys. If ever there were an I told you so. Lord Varys tried everything he could, even sacrificing his own life to protect the people of the realm from the fiery tyrant developing before his eyes. He stood for his execution and was graceful even when being burned alive. And Big D, those are the nominees for Game of Thrones Man of the Year.
Well, two things before I get to the vote. You spoke too soon. One of the write-in votes said, it's pretty stupid to separate male and female heroes when you have a single one for deaths. Happy, sad, satisfying deaths. It's Tyrion, by the way. That was one. And then another telling thing. Did you see how many votes Bran got? The king? How many votes did Bran get that you think?
I'm going to say like next to none.
Got the same amount of votes as my Snow in King's Landing. One vote.
One vote.
One person thought the king of the Six Kingdoms was the man of the year.
Well, I mean, literally, I think all he did this episode was show up. He steered some ravens. I guess he did put himself out there as bait, which was pretty ballsy. But I mean, there were entire seasons where he wasn't around, right? Like, I mean, maybe it's just a lack of stickiness.
But in third place on our list here, for the male character, which moved us the most, third place was Jon Snow. Second place, Sandor Clegane. And the winner, who's been a fan favorite since probably episode 1, Tyrion Lannister.
I would have agreed with that after the final episode until I started reading all the emails about people saying like Tyrion was looking out for himself. You know, would he have been so bold if his life wasn't in danger? I don't know if I'm sour on Tyrion. Definitely, though, Peter Dinklage, my favorite performance in the series by far.
But I think we can agree, and some of the write-ins supported this. The most quality guy on the show, the one who you probably would want to date someone in your family, has to be Sir Davos, right? He's a quality dude.
Right. Except for he's a smuggler. Also, we had Sir fucking Braun of Highgarden and Master of fucking Coin. Ghost just keeps popping up in every category because the internet freaked the fuck out when Jon didn't even give him a goodbye pet. And then everyone rejoiced when he finally got the good boy pets he deserved in the final episode. On the opposite side of that coin, Game of Thrones put our heroes to the test this season. Some triumphed, some failed, but all did their best. Win or lose, which human female character moved you the most to win Woman of the Year? And the nominees were Arya Stark. We saw her grow up a ton this season, taking power and control of her sex, taking power and control of battle, slaying the Night King, and going on her merry way to pursue an independent future. The next nominee for Woman of the Year was Daenerys Targaryen. I think no one can deny that Daenerys Targaryen rose from being property to wishing for the liberation of those around her. She achieved her goal of conquest and touching the Iron Throne, unfortunately, never able to secure it. Her monarch counterpart, Queen Sansa Stark, also a nominee for Woman of the Year. Sansa kept her backbone as the rest of the North was under Daenerys' sway. She masterminded the independence of the North to become the first Stark ruler of an independent North in centuries. Next up, we have Sir Brienne of Tarth. Brienne of Tarth was finally knighted this season, fought valiantly at the Battle of Winterfell, and in a complete boss move, went to the White Book and entered nice things about Jaime, even though he completely bailed on her. Next nominee we have is Cersei Lannister. Technically not a hero, but if you see things from her perspective in a sort of a Wicked on Broadway perspective, Cersei fought to keep her kingdom, to keep Lannisters in power, and for the life of her child, and therefore she is a nominee for Woman of the Year. Next up, we have Lady Lyanna Mormont, who fought against a giant, rallied the North, reminded Jon Snow of his station, and sacrificed the legacy of her house in defense of Winterfell. Next nominee we have is Melisandre of Asai. Remember that Melisandre didn't have to even be there, showed up, was the third string substitute for lighting the trench on fire, and stayed true to her word, dying before dawn. Next up we have Missandei of Noth. Again, the character that managed to keep her peaceful demeanor and diplomacy while war was raging around her. She was the conduit through which Daenerys was able to communicate, and arguably was the last string that was holding Daenerys back from torching all of King's Landing. Those are, Big D, the nominees for Woman of the Year.
Yep, and this one was pretty lopsided as well. In third place was Queen Sansa. Second place, Sir Brienne of Tarth. And the winner, and one of the bigger landslides, at 31% of the vote, Arya Stark.
I like that one person even did a open-ended response just to say, I had to come here to say, Arya, never have I rooted for someone to find her way, and never have I cheered and gasped as I watched her kill the Night King and navigate King's Landing. And I do want to make a point, a correction to what I said earlier about the battle at Winterfell and us not cheering. I certainly was cheering when Arya slew the Night King. That was a moving and powerful event, and I was glad that it was Arya who did the deed. I wasn't cheering for everybody fighting at Winterfell because I thought a lot of it was just meh.
No, I think if you had half the soldiers in that battle who had her intestinal fortitude, they would have kicked the dead's ass. She's looking around there, even after she get her bell rung, hit against the wall. She's looking around. The dudes are dying left and right. She was badass, and you got to give her credit for that. She did her character proud, and in the end, she's one of those that I don't think we can really tear down that much. A great character. She came a long way.
And it's only fitting that our final award be battle-driven. This is the Leeroy Jenkins Medal of Honor, awarded to the character who threw their own safety to the wayside and braved the odds in combat. There's bravery, and there's going full Leeroy Jenkins. Game of Thrones threw our favorite characters into the heat of battle, testing the mettle of each. So who was the bravest, the craziest, and the master of war? And our first nominee for the Jenkins Award is the Dothraki. They charged headlong into utter darkness, knowing the army of the dead was waiting. Who does that? Next nominee is Drogon. Coming in from the top? Nah. Attacking King's Landing at night? Forget about it. Drogon sees it, flies at it, kills it. Even furniture. The next nominee for the Leeroy Jenkins Medal of Honor is Beric Dondarrion. You don't die 7 times without being a little reckless. Beric at one point literally uses his body as a shield. Hardcore. Next nominee is Ghost. Only one brave soul opened the attack on the army of the dead without a horse, and that was a wolf. We're not sure what Ghost was doing out there, but we know he lost an ear doing it. Now please someone pet that goodest boy. Then, of course, Lady Lyanna Mormont. She ran at an undead giant, got crushed to death, and still stabbed him in the eye. Our next nominee is Grey Worm, who goes inside Winterfell's walls during the long night, then comes back out again to make sure that fireworks launch on time. Only the biggest badass in the entire Unsullied army. The next nominee for the Jenkins Award is Theon Greyjoy. Some argue that Theon could have just waited a minute and been rescued by Arya's dive bomb attack on the Night King. But that's not how Theon rolls. He's all about that charge you with the spear life. Speaking of Arya, she's the next nominee for the Medal of Honor. Arya Stark routinely risked her life in Season 8, whether playing salad shooter on the Winterfell battlements or dashing through the streets of a crumbling King's Landing. This woman will do anything for a good kill. The next nominee, Sir Gregor Clegane. When your little brother shows up with the express goal of killing you, it might be time to retreat. But not for the Mountain. He abandoned his queen, his creator, and his own armor for one shot at Clegane Bowl. Cersei Lannister showed up as a nominee. Cersei had a million chances to flee King's Landing, even when staring down a larger army with one enormous dragon. But she decided to go Leeroy too. Next, we have Tormund Giantsbane. We're all gonna die. We're not sure Tormund ever was afraid during the Battle of Winterfell, but you don't have to be afraid when you're a wildling berserker. And last but not least, the final nominee for the Leeroy Jenkins Medal of Honor is Jon Snow. Giant field of zombies? Jon's gonna run at it. Dragons spewing blue fire all over the Winterfell courtyard? Jon's gonna yell at it. If only he were this brave in the bedroom, we might have had a happy ending. And Big D, those are the nominees for the Season 8 Game of Thrones Leeroy Jenkins Medal of Honor.
What's the opposite of Leeroy Jenkins? So somebody who puts all the other characters at risk just so they can feel better about themselves? Is there
I don't know.
Is there a nominee for that?
Let me see. Maybe I could go to Old Town and search the Citadel for an answer.
Yeah, the Samuel Tarly. That could be a future category that we use.
The Samuel Tarly Award for Cowardice.
Yeah, your friends who are battle tested don't want you on the battlefield. They joke about you getting them killed. You still insist on going out there. You give away your your Valyrian steel sword, and you just lay down crying as your best friend's killed. So Samuel Tarly will be another category we're going to do in the future. But for here, in third place was Theon Greyjoy. Second place, Lady Lyanna Mormont, and the winner, Arya Stark. I can agree with Arya, but it seems like there's somebody missing who'd done a lot of things throughout the 7 seasons.
Big D, I'm shocked that Jon Snow, who has put his life on the line over and over and over again. Granted, he always has to be rescued by someone because he goes a little too far. But he put his life on the line over and over and over again. He stands up against a dragon one-on-one. 6% of the vote? Come on, people.
He fucking got killed. At that point, somebody checks out. They say, hey, guess what? My watch is over. I'm going to go find a quiet place to live. He fucking doubled down, Battle of the Bastards. He gets trapped on that little island with the whites around him. He survives that. He survives going in the water. Uncle Benjen saves him. Then he's going to go the long night. He's been through some shit, but he was never a coward. He was always there. Come on. He deserves some more respect.
I think it would have helped if they kind of Bruce Willis'd him up from Die Hard, so he just looked all beat to fuck at this point. He's like missing an ear and eyes poked out. They give him the full Beric Dondarrion treatment. People might have had a little more sympathy.
Yeah, break like the handle or the hilt off a long claw. Make him look worse for the wear. But that dude's been through some shit. You remember he got buried under a mountain of dead at Battle of the Bastards? This dude deserves a vacation. Come on, give him some respect.
Now, one very common write-in that we got, which I should have included, and you guys are absolutely right, was Daenerys. I was thinking of Drogon being the main force in the battle at King's Landing, but really, Daenerys was the one who flew her dragon straight on into battle every chance. She had a better game plan than Jon Snow in episode 3 while battling the Night King. She even got a few kills with a sword defending Jorah. Totally forgot about that. And then she just went 100% head on in episode 5 and won her battle and technically won her throne. So props to Daenerys for also being an incredible badass.
Yeah, imagine if we had this Daenerys throughout all the seasons where she was just slaying people left and right. Would have been a very different show. Would have been interesting to see. Somebody needs to write that up.
People would have been like, where's this coming from? When did she become so violent?
Or no, you make her kill just everyone she comes across, and then in the final episode, she becomes peaceful. People be like, what the fuck just happened?
And honorable mention to the memes from Free Folk. That's a Reddit reference. They were fucking sweet this year. If anything good came from the season, it was top-level memes. Well done, everyone. All right, and Big D, that's a wrap on the Thronies, our second annual and final Shat on TV Thronie Awards for Game of Thrones. We will be doing the Westies after Westworld, and I don't know what the hell we'll call the Watchmen Awards. The Watchies?
Oh, no, I don't know. Write in suggestions, no. This isn't our last Game of Thrones podcast.
Absolutely not. We have dozens and dozens of rewrites for Game of Thrones. That was listeners writing in to host@shatontv.com with their suggestions on how to replace scenes, episodes, or entire seasons of Game of Thrones with something that was better. You think you're better than the Double Ds? You think that you're better than HBO's writing staff? This is your chance to prove it. Write into host@shatontv.com. Please try to keep your responses to 500 words or fewer. We have to read through all of these. And unlike some of the other letters that we get in for the small council, it's very, very hard to trim from somebody's narrative storyline. So please try to keep them short and sweet, but get creative.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Derek English. 4,000 words.
I did the entire write-up for the Thronies, and it was fewer than 2,000 words. I'm like, Jesus, Derek, come on, man.
You see what happens? We read him on the small council, and it just emboldened him. He just went fucking crazy.
He's been commenting on Facebook now.
Yeah, he's all engaged.
Kenny P's been creeping around on shatontv.com. He's writing little essays on there. By the way, guys, if you haven't been to shatontv.com, you can read all of the emails that come into us there and join the conversation. Plus, you can see this Thronie write-up in its entirety. So be sure to join us there. And as Big D mentioned, we have the Rewrites episode coming up next Tuesday, June 11th. And in addition, we've restarted our sister podcast, Shat the Movies, where we will be releasing a very special edition of RoboCop. That concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Game of Thrones. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, search for Shat on TV Podcast. The website is shatontv.com. Again, if you'd like to email us, it's host@shatontv.com or send us a voicemail at 914-719-SHAT. If you'd like to support the podcast financially, you can contribute through PayPal or Venmo at shatontv.com/PayPal or /Venmo. Or if you'd like to use our Amazon link to shop and support us with a few cents off of every purchase that costs you nothing, you can go on shatontv.com/Amazon. And we have a survey that you can fill out to help us find sponsors that match your interests for future projects that we do. That's at shatontv.com/survey. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. Also, if you haven't checked out any of our other TV podcasts, we cover Taboo, American Gods, Westworld, and True Detective. Those are all available at shatontv.com. And of course, there is our aforementioned sister podcast, Shat the Movies. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on June 11th for our Shat on TV Game of Thrones Rewrites edition. We'll see you then.